Hello, students. I apologize that I cannot be with you today, but I'm going to give you the whole lecture that you would have received had you been sitting in my class, and you can watch it from anywhere. So this is the way it's just going to work for today, and I will see you again next week in class. So we are talking about delivery, and delivery is very important. We all watched the Stark County Treasurer destroy his speech because of poor delivery. So we're going to take some time to really think about delivery and go through the chapter and review what you have already read. Now I'm going to embed 3 phrases into this lecture. On Leo, you are going to have to type in an assignment where you put those 3 phrases or words in order, and that will just let me know that you watched the entire lecture completely. So plan on having a notepad next to you so you can write down the phrases as I say them in the lectures. All right, let's get started. The key concepts of this chapter, and we have really already discussed this. Delivery impacts your audience's response. The goal of public speaking is to get your message across to your audience, and your delivery can really detract from that. Speaking and talking both take practice. Public speaking takes a lot of practice, and you want to make it come across like a conversation, not like a lecture like we're doing here, and not as a robot where it's a memorized regurgitation. You want to have a conversation with your audience. You want to create focus and energy, and you can use your anxiety to do just that. And we'll talk about that, how to use anxiety, because we are all nervous when we speak publicly. We are even nervous when we speak and film on video, although we're all getting a little bit better at that. We want to use outlines and speaking aids to organize our thoughts and to remind us when we have to slow down, or that Title IX is not Title IX. You want to use your body and your voice effectively. None of those, oh, as we heard in our Stark County Treasurer's speech. And we want to become adept with group presentations. So this is kind of how we learn the process. So create focus and energy from your anxiety. This is a big one. A lot of times, anxiety for public speaking paralyzes us, and we don't want to be paralyzed. And I remember when I was in your shoes, I used to even avoid working on the speech because it would cause so much terror in my body, really, in my brain and in my life. I was terrified. And I just put it off. I didn't even want to think about it. But I want you to realize that that anxiety you can use to your benefit. First of all, your anxiety of public speaking, you want to use to have you start working on your speech and have you start organizing and have you start practicing and practice in the mirror. And the text says you have to practice at least 4 times. I think you have to practice at least an hour, and you have to do it in the mirror because you want to see what you look like. But then you want your anxiety to energize your performance and your presentation. Work in hand gestures so that you can connect with your audience. Make sure you are giving yourself a good pace for presentation. And your anxiety tends to speed you up a little bit. You don't want it to speed you up too much so that we can't understand what you're saying, but we use it to give that little extra oomph. When people talk a little faster, they seem a little more excited, and they get their message across a little more clearly. So, strategies for managing anxiety. Remember, everyone is nervous. No one is rooting for you to fail. So, your audience really is hoping for you. They may not be sympathetic to your topic, but they don't want you to make a fool of yourself. You want to expect to be anxious. It is normal. Everybody is. Getting up in front of people makes you nervous. But nerves can make you a better speaker. You can use that nervous energy to practice, to rehearse, to use gestures, to use movements. You don't want to pace back and forth, and you don't want those jitters to show as you do aerobics in class, but you want your message to be exciting and you want your audience to listen. You don't ever look as nervous as you feel. When you get up there, we can't tell that your heart is racing. We can't tell all of those internal anxieties that are going on. We only see you presenting yourself. So recognize that although you feel very nervous and you think everyone can tell that you're nervous, we can't. See the big picture. Make sure you understand that your speech is important and what role it plays for your audience. What is your message and why are you getting it across to your audience? Look at it in the grand scheme of things. This is one short 7-minute presentation. This is not going to make or break you. You can handle this. You can get through it. And it doesn't have to be perfect because the audience really isn't going to notice those little flaws. We look at it from the larger perspective. Your topic is what counts. You have a solid outline and a good concept, and really all you need to do is practice. So once you can use the formula to write out your outline and put all of your research in there, and you know your topic and you're talking about something that's important to you, all you have to do is practice and you will get through it. And if you don't, you're not going to die. This is where you're supposed to mess up, but you're supposed to learn from that. So how are you going to do it better the next time? Strategies for energizing your audience. You want to visualize your success. This is a huge one. They say a lot of public speaking is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you feel like you are going to fail, if you watch yourself in your mind's eye and you see yourself making a fool of yourself, uh, that's how it happens. And we tend to shut ourselves down. We tend to become so overwhelmed with it that we don't practice enough. We think that we get it, or we think that we're never going to be good enough. Rather than doing all of those things that will inevitably just shoot you in the foot for public speaking, visualize your success. Visualize you getting up there and knocking it out of the park and making it amazing and your audience loving your topic, or you convincing them to do whatever you want them to do, donate blood, vote for you, whatever it is. Picture it to be a success the way you want to. Picture this to be the best experience you've had thus far in public speaking. The audience is on your side. We do not, as your audience, we do not want to see you fail. In fact, when students do end up struggling, most of the audience can empathize with you, and most of your audience is rooting for you to find your place, to get through it. Act as if you belong in front of the room. You are the expert. This is your place. You own the room. Own it. Go up there and stand up there and present as if you have the answers. You've done the research. This is your sphere of expertise, and you are going to present it to us. Don't think, oh, I'm not good enough. Always think positively, visualize your success, and own the room. Types of preparation and delivery. So we've talked about these a little bit, but I want you to know. Speaking from memory. We are never going to memorize speeches in this class, and I will not ask you to speak from memory. There is never going to be any 7 years ago or, Romeo, oh Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? You are never going to memorize some script and then regurgitate it to us. That's not going to happen here. That's a different class for a different time. But sometimes people do speak from memory. And if it's a short little statement, you can do it from memory. And there are parts of your speech that you can deliver from memory. Your introduction is usually only about 30 seconds. Most of us can memorize our introductions, especially if we follow the formula. We state our topic. We activate, we activate the audience's attention. We let them know why we are experts in the field and why they should listen to our topic. And then we give a roadmap. Doing those few things, you can memorize those. but the body of your speech is never going to be memorized. Speaking from manuscript, we've also discussed that. Usually when you speak from manuscript, you end up reading, and we have already seen that happen a few times in class. Speaking from manuscript, as we discussed, usually only happens in two cases: politics or acting or news reporting. They have manuscripts in front of them on the teleprompter, and they present from those. Um, and politicians do it. If you've ever watched the State of the Union, that is delivered from manuscript. And we already have discussed why that is, because every single word is looked at, and every single word is placed there for a specific reason, so that when things are spun, they're spun in the direction that that politician wants them to be. Extemporaneous speaking really is speaking from notes, and that's what we're going to do in this class. We are going to have our notes. We're going to have our speaking notes. We are going to prep our professional outline that is the full embodiment of our speech, but we are not going to present from that. We are going to present from speaking notes. And having those notes in front of you, they may be, helpful cues, pronunciation keys, delivery notes, slow down, say this again, repetition, those little reminders that you need. That is what extemporaneous speaking is. You are speaking from notes. Impromptu speaking is when there's very little preparation. You are asked to speak. In your life, you will speak from, impromptu. At times, what are your thoughts on this matter? Where do you think we should go from here? You can always use the formula to organize your thoughts. You can always take a minute and breathe. But impromptu speeches are not meant to be very long, and they are not expected to be, these long monologues that you have to deliver with precise information, because there's very little preparation that goes into those. Staying on time is important, and this is not really a type of delivery, but in preparation for delivery, you do want to stay on time. Oftentimes I have students, and this is important to your delivery, that don't leave enough time for their conclusion. And if you don't have a conclusion, you don't have that little bow that wraps up your package and delivers it to your audience. You need a conclusion to your speech. So if you have 7 minutes, you want to have your 30-second, 40-second introduction, your 6-minute speech, your 5-minute speech, and then your 40-second conclusion. And you want to make sure you have time for that. As we go on with public speaking, I will start giving you a hard stop. We've all seen people, and faculty members do it all the time. I prep this whole lecture, and it takes 60 minutes, but I only have a 50-minute class, so I'm not going to give you the end of it. And it leaves everyone hanging. You want to prepare your presentation for the amount of time you have with your audience. Otherwise, they're left hanging, and that's not good. And it actually also keeps you moving through your presentation. Types of speaking aids: note cards versus paper. We've talked about this. I use paper. I use large sheets. I use them like they're note cards because I can type them very clearly, and I can see them, and they're not written in my scribble. And I flip through them. Note cards for me are too small at this point in my life, but you are free to use note cards if that's what works for you. How you hold them, you want to hold them up so you can see them, but you don't want the audience to necessarily see them because they become a distraction. Make your fonts readable. Record general concepts. So, make sure that you are putting forward, where your audience is supposed to go, and the general concept of where you are moving with your speech. As you fine-tune your outline, the only things in your speaking outline that should be precisely there and potentially written out completely are quotations and quantitative information and your sources. So you want to cite your sources when you cite them, especially for quantitative information or for support of what you're saying. If you're saying 9 out of 10 dentists choose Crest, that's one thing if I say it. But if you say, according to the United States Dental Association, 9 out of 10 dentists choose Crest. Or according to Dr. Bizga's research study published in the Dental Medicine of America journal, 9 out of 10 dentists choose Crest. Those are 3 very different statements. And the first one is really just because I said so, and the rest of them have support. You want to make sure you are citing your sources very clearly. And sometimes at times you want to write out your source names phonetically so that you can pronounce them if they are difficult. This is where your speaking notes, you want to get it right. The rest of your stories and your narratives, and if you're telling information, they don't have to be as precise in your notes. Instead, just jot down the main things that you need to go to lead you through the speech. But when you come to sources or quantitative data or specific quotations that you want to state, make sure you have those clearly written in your outline. Using your voice effectively. You want to make sure you can be heard. We've already kind of talked about this. Audiences don't listen very long if they can't hear you. I've even recorded video recordings and realized that the sound was out and my audience couldn't hear me. And I had to redo the whole thing because when we are watching videos, if you can't hear, you don't watch very long. When you're sitting in a classroom or sitting in a presentation and you can't hear, you don't listen for very long. So you want to adjust your volume to the setting. You don't want to be shouting at your audience in a very small, intimate encounter. But then you don't want to be whispering to your audience in a larger venue. Style. You want to relax and you have to remind yourself to slow down. Now, I already said that nerves are going to make you speak more quickly, and more quickly speakers tend to be more persuasive and have more energy behind their presentation. But your nerves also make you speak so quickly that we can't understand. As an audience member, you go too fast for us. So always try to slow down. And as you practice your speeches, you will see you'll craft a 5-minute speech, but then as you deliver it in front of people, you'll deliver a 4-minute and 20-second speech because your nerves are going to make you speak that much quicker that you're going to have that uptick. So if you need a 5 to 7 minute speech, make sure you craft at least a 6-minute speech so that you have built in that time for your nerves that are going to speed up your presentation. Articulation. Now, it's already happened twice in my classes where students present and they slur words. They just don't finish them. It comes across as a lazy speaker. Ha, mer. What y'all doing? Dun. Dun is not a word. You have to make sure when you are presenting that you are completing your sentences and articulating. Now, I'm not saying, we watched the Stark County treasurer candidate, and he said something he overpronounced words. You don't want to do that either. You want to use proper pronunciation. You want to articulate clearly. You want to make sure your audience understands and relates to what you're saying. Inflection, you want to have a contrast and you want to have focus. So there are times when you punctuate sentences with the inflection in your voice. Questions, if you want to inquire of your audience, you change the way you end the sentence, and it really is just the inflection of your voice that lends itself to that. So add some variety in. It keeps your audience paying attention. Using your body effectively. You do want to stand up straight. You don't want to lay on your lectern. You can walk around. Movement maintains attention of the audience, but you don't want to pace. You don't want to be too quick, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You don't want to run a race up there. If you start to perspire because you're moving too much, that's a telltale sign that you're obviously running a marathon. You want to face the audience. You never want to face the back. If you have a presentational aid behind you, you don't want to talk to your presentational aid somewhere else. Oftentimes, I have had students present reading, especially in video, they read somewhere else and their eyes never look at that camera. And your audience does not think that you are looking at them if you are looking at somebody else. So you want to face the front. You want to face your audience. You want to move for a little emphasis. You want to work those in. A lot of times, those gestures that people see that seem so natural are actually very contrived, and they are part of their rehearsal for their speech. You don't want to pace. Again, we talked about, you're not running a race up there, and you want to use natural gestures. So, a tool, but not just a tool, a weapon. We saw that in the Stark County Treasurer. It seemed so contrived. It seemed awful. That wasn't necessarily a gesture that would be a natural gesture, but you can work natural gestures in there. Nodding of heads, using your hands, pointing. All of those things become benefits to your delivery and your presentation. The word for this part of the presentation is happy. The word is happy. Please write that down so that when we ask at the end what the words are, you have the first word. Communicating credibility is very important. You want your audience to trust you and to believe you. To do that, you have to make eye contact, and that is so nerve-wracking at times. I've seen people present to the back of the room, and they don't make eye contact. They like stare above people. When you're staring above people, people know, and your audience knows, that you are not making eye contact with them. So you don't want to look at the back of the room over your audience. You want to make eye contact, but that doesn't mean you have to make eye contact with every single person in the room. You can sweep the room. I tend to put strategically placed eyes around the room, one on the left, one on the right, and one in the middle. And if I look at those friendly eyes, everyone in the room thinks I am looking at them. They think I am comfortable. But you have to make sure you are looking at people. And you want to plan ahead, because once you get up there and get into your speech, if I ask you at the end of your speech, who did you look at? You can't remember, because you fall into that, just plugging and chugging your way through. You want to make sure it's written in your speaking notes, look to the left, look to the right, and have your eyes, the friendly eyes looking back at you, so that you know that you've done it and you don't go on autopilot and don't make eye contact with anyone. Make sure you have practiced it in. Choosing your appearance. This is a very important thing. There's jokes, if you comedians have said, like, if you dress like a police officer, you tend to be treated like a police officer, whether that be good or bad. If you dress like a prostitute, you tend to be treated like a prostitute, whether that be good or bad. That is the reality of public speaking. You need to dress the part. If you want to set yourself apart from the rest of the audience and they are all in jeans and tennis shoes, then you wear a suit. We tend to, and you'll think about this in your life, the faculty members that you have, your professors, those that wear a suit, you respond to differently than those that wear jeans and flip-flops to teach their class. There is nothing wrong with wearing a suit or wearing jeans or flip-flops, but it does create a relationship with your audience. So know what type of relationship that you want with your audience and dress that part. So you want to make sure you dress to fit the occasion. If this is a formal occasion, you want to dress formally. If it's a beach party or a garden party, or you want to dress to fit that occasion. Be neat and clean. Well, unless you are playing the part of a chimney sweep and that is your role, and that then wear the costume that you require, and make sure your appearance doesn't attract too much attention. You want your audience to like you, but you don't want your audience to be shocked or in awe by you. So recognize that, this is not necessarily the time to wear the flashy stilettos, even if you love them and they are fantastic. They may draw your attention or your audience's attention away from what you are actually trying to do, which is get your message across to them, not that you have cool shoes. In this, it says you have to practice at least 4 times. I'm going to put another hidden word in right now, and the hidden word is repetition. Repetition. So the first word you know, and you already wrote down, here's your second word, repetition. Repetition. But that lends itself very easily to practice 4 times. 4 times from start to finish, I don't necessarily think is enough, especially if you're very nervous, especially if this is not your area of expertise. You want to stand in front of that mirror and you want to go through your presentation, and you want to go through your introduction, and you want to memorize your main points, and then you want to think about, how are we bringing this all together. Honestly, as I practice my speeches for presentations, I tend to change them around. I start listening to them and seeing how they present to just myself in the mirror. And I have been known to move my first main point into my second main point, my second main point, I move to the first, or I move things around because when actually presenting it, it sounds different and it plays differently. So make sure you are practicing, I would say, for a good hour. So whatever that ends up being, a solid hour of rehearsal is necessary. Practice in front of an audience. This is a big one. First, practice in front of the mirror so you are your audience, but then practice in front of your peers or your friends. Don't let your graded presentation or your formal presentation, whatever, be the first time you're standing in front of an audience, because audiences can give you feedback. So present to your friends, present to your family. Let them give you feedback right off the top. It's okay to make mistakes. As you practice your speech, you are going to make mistakes. You're going to hear things. You're going to see things the way that you present them. This is your time to change it around. And again, practice in breathing. Take pauses. Write in your notes. Breathe. Feel where that breath punctuates your thought. Use that, but work it in as you rehearse your presentation. Answering audience questions. If there is a question and answer part of your presentation, you want to anticipate some questions that are out there. So is there a place that you have struggled with your topic? Was your second main point not really all that strong? You're going to probably have to have some follow-up questions about that. Expect to repeat complicated concepts. So if you are presenting something that is complicated, that your audience may struggle to understand, make sure you have it another way. Repeat it and understand that that's probably going to be an audience question. Expand on lightly covered subjects. So if you did broad brushstrokes, make sure you are able to give more detail, because that may be a question in the audience questions. And ask the practice session. So when you're rehearsing, ask that audience to come up with questions and remember those and come up with good answers to those, because those are probably very, very key to the questions that you will actually receive. When you are answering questions from your audience, you always want to slow down. You want to repeat the question back to them so you have some time to think, and make sure you fully understand the question. What are you asking? And sometimes you can say it just that simply. Are you asking if whatever it is, before you go on to answer? Remember that the question is asked in public and the answer is given in public. So you want to make sure that you are answering questions with the same formality and the same precise nature that you presented your speech. I've been at many question and answer sessions with attorneys that may not be the brightest, and they somehow give great presentations, but when the question and answer phase comes, they lace profanity into their responses. And you want to say, like, how do I take you seriously? You are swearing like a sailor. You gave such a good presentation. What you want is to make sure you realize that the question is answered in public, and you want your professional response to be there, not some, you know, off the cuff, I'm ill prepared and I'm going to swear or whatever. I'm going to speak freely or in a natural tone. This is a professional question and answer period. View all questions as friendly questions. That's a great question, even if it's a hostile question. You don't need to have all the answers. If you don't know something, don't make it up. Just say, I don't have a solid answer for you on that, but I will happily do more research. Let me give you my contact information. Let me take your contact information and I will get you a response to that, by week's end or whenever you can do it. If you don't have the answer, don't make it up. And then you want to make sure that you answer questions, not speeches. Sometimes people get up and they give these long speeches and there's not really a question in there. And then it leads you to respond with another nothing. Make sure that you are only responding to questions. So when people get up and give long speeches, make sure you then reel it in. Okay, by your statement, I believe you are asking this. Is that correct? And then you want to focus on your topic. If questions are about something else, you need to reel it in. And we've all experienced this in class when students have kind of hijacked the topic, talking about something else that is related but only tangentially. If there's a tangential question, you want to reel it back in and focus on your topic, because this is what you are talking about and this is where you are an expert. Group presentations. Group presentations occur with like 2 to 6 speakers, and sometimes these are just a cluster. So to prepare for these, you want to make them seamless and consistent. We have all done group presentations where everyone kind of does their own thing and then they come back and it's like this cluster of nothingness, and you can tell who really put work in and you can tell who was dead weight in the group because they don't really have very much and they don't have slides and they don't have. You don't want that to happen. You want there to be, a solid, good group presentation, because as you continue in your career, nobody cares that Johnny didn't pull his own weight. What we care about is what your presentation looks like in the end. So weak presentations tend to be awkward and chaotic. Strong presentations are organized and they have a consistency to them and they flow. So the key to success is, cooperation and collaboration. You want to, you may assign different duties. You're going to do part 1, you're going to do part 2, you're going to do part 3, but then you have to kind of come back together and put it all together and make sure there is consistency and make sure you practice together for these group presentations. Our third word for class lecture is almost. Almost. So your first word was one, your second word was something else, and now your third word. All right, we are almost done. We only have a few more slides. So, with group presentations, planning is very important. It is your key to success. And you want to make sure you have a plan. Start early, divide the labor, give each speaker equal times to speak. Don't have one person cover it all. That's kind of the easy way out. But with group presentations, everybody should have a speaking part and they should be of equal or equivalent times. You may have relay presentations where one person hands things off to the next, which we often see in schools, in classroom presentations. We have the relay where the first person does this, the second person does this. You want your transitions to be seamless. You want everybody in the group to know where you're going. There may be a master of ceremonies that kind of introduces the whole group. Hi, I'm Mary Michelle. I'm here. I'm going to cover the first section of this, but as we get started, I want you to know all of our group members and where we're going with this presentation. That can be part of your introduction. And you will have a master of ceremonies that does this. And then you want your seamless transition. So now I'm finished talking about this. It leads us directly into our next topic, which is this, and Tommy's going to tell you a little bit about that. So however you have to do it, you want that transition to be there. Tell your audience that you're finished with the one part. Give your audience a quick idea of where you're going, and then pass the baton. And for these, with your group, you need to rehearse at least 3 times with everybody together. And I know that's sometimes hard, but as you continue in your professional life, these presentations become very important. So you want to make sure you have everybody on board. So at least 3 full run-throughs. And if your presentation is an hour long, that means you've got to carve out 3 hours to rehearse with your group, because everybody has to go through it, 3 times. Okay. Last word is weekend. So our last word is weekend. Write those down. I can't repeat the first words because they don't lend themselves then for you to watching the whole thing. Then you would just watch the end if I gave you all the words at the end. So, all right, have a good weekend, and I will see you next week. So remember, you want to engage your audience. You want to turn anxiety into focus and energy. You want to prepare and practice. Use your voice and body and understand your appearance. How do you want to present yourself to your audience? And discover the power of group presentations. So have a good weekend, and that is all for this chapter.